Hi, this is John with PDFtax.com, and today we're looking at Individual Income Tax Return Form 1040. This form was downloaded from the IRS website, so it's the official government form, but as you can see, we've made some enhancements to it. The most obvious one is the yellow navigation buttons that we've added. Now I've gone ahead and created a fictitious tax return for Sam and Wendy Jones, and we're going to go ahead and see how this form works. So I'm going to select married filing joint here, and as you can see, I don't have any exemptions over here yet, but if I select yourself and your spouse, now I've got two exemptions, and I can go ahead and add some dependents, and I'll get some more exemptions, of course. So let me go ahead and do that. If you'll just give me a few seconds to enter these Social Security numbers that I'm just kind of making up as I go along. There's Eddie Jones and Susan Jones. And finally, we'll add Beth Jones. There now I have 5 exemptions, which is what I would expect. The next thing I want to know is, do these 3 dependents qualify for the child tax credit? And in order to figure that out, I'm going to go to the instructions. These are the Form 1040 instructions for dependents, and it's a really good idea to review those instructions to make sure we've actually got dependents, first of all. But then if I scroll down here, I get to the question that I want. Does your qualifying child qualify you for the child tax credit? And the 2 questions I need to look at here are, was the child under age 17, and was the child a U.S. citizen? I'm going to say that the answer to those 2 questions is yes, and so all 3 of them qualify, and I'll check those boxes just like that. Now the next thing I want to do is to add some income. So let me scroll down a little bit here, and you can see on line 7 there's a couple fields there that are not actually on the government form for taxpayer and spouse wages, and we need those to compute the self-employment tax, which we'll be doing just a little bit later. Now those fields, you can see them on the screen, but if you print the paper copy, they won't print on the paper copy. That's also true of these yellow navigation buttons over here. So you could use the paper copy to file your own income tax return if you wanted to. So let me add the wages here for the taxpayer, and then for the spouse, 14,200. And then I want to add some interest, so I'm going to click here on Schedule B, and I will add a bank account for Bank of America, like that, and then I'm going to say they have $200 of interest. Now I need to remember to scroll down to the bottom here and answer some questions. Do you have a financial interest in a foreign account? And I'm going to say no. And were you a grantor or transfer of a foreign trust? And again, I'm going to say no. Now I'm going to click on this navigation button to take me back to the navigation screen and back to page 1. And you can see that my $200 came in right there. So my total income right now is $37,600. The next thing I want to do is add some business income. So I'm going to go over here and click on this one. That'll take me to Schedule C, which is the form we use for business income. And I'm going to say that Wendy Jones, the spouse, has a tax preparation business. Now, as you can see right now, the proprietor is Sam Jones, and his Social Security number is right here. But if I check this box, it changes to Wendy, which is what I want. So I'll type in tax prep right here, like that. And then I need a business code, and I'm going to go over to the Schedule C instructions and scroll down. And here's what I want right here, 541213 for tax preparation. So I'll go back here and enter that 541213 like that. Then I got some questions here I need to answer. The accounting method is going to be cash, and we're going to say that she materially participates in the business and she doesn't have any 1099s. So this is going to be a part-time business for her. So we'll say she has $4,000 of income, and then advertising of 300, and on line 18 we're going to say that there's 800 in office expense like that. Then going down to line 22 we'll have 700 of supplies and 200 of taxes and licenses. So she'll have a nice round figure of $2,000 of business income, and we'll check this box to say everything is at risk. Now let's go back to page 1 and scroll down, and you can see that we're now up to 39,600 for the income. Now let's scroll down to see what our tax return looks like. On line 27 we have this self-employment tax, and in order to figure out where that came from and how that was computed, let's go back to the navigation page, and we'll go to Schedule SE for the spouse, and we'll scroll down a little bit, and there's our $2,000 of business income, and the tax is $283, and one half of that is $142. So that's how that $142 got in there on page 1, and that is actually a deduction. So right now they have adjusted gross income of $39,458. Now let's scroll down to page 2 of 1040, see what that looks like. There's our adjusted gross income that came forward from page 1, and our standard deduction for married filing joint is $12,600. So that's that right there on line 40, and we have 5 exemptions times 4,050 is 20,250. So that gives us taxable income of 6,608. And then if you look at the tax table, you'll see that the tax on that is $663. Then on line 52, we have the child tax credit. You remember those 3 boxes we checked for the dependents on page 1, and that's why that is there. And if you wanted to see how that was calculated, you could click on this navigation button and it would take you to the worksheet. Then further down we have an additional child tax credit of $2337. If you add the $2337 and the $663, you get $3,000, which is what you would expect because each dependent is $1,000 times 3 is $3,000. The difference between these two is that the first one here is a non-refundable credit, so we're limited to the amount of tax that we have. So our tax is $663, and we're limited to $663 for our credit. But down here, this portion, which was computed on Form 8812, which you could also look at, see how that was computed, is a refundable credit. So it gets down here on the total payments line as a refund, and our refund right now is $2,054, which is the difference between the self-employment tax of $283 and the additional child tax credit. So that's how that works. Now let's go ahead and scroll up a little bit, and we want to add a child and dependent care credit. So we'll click on 2441, which is the form that we want, and then we'll start out by entering the provider name, which is going to be KinderCare, like that, and the address, we'll enter that. And we also need the ID number for KinderCare, which will say that that is that, and we'll say that they paid $2,000 in child care expenses this year, and the child that they paid the expenses for is going to be their third child, Beth Jones. So we'll enter her name here, and her social goes right here. And $2,000 for her. So we get a credit down at the bottom here of $440. So let's go back up to, this time we want to go to page 2, and there's our $440. So that is how that works. The next credit we want to talk about is the earned income credit, which is on line 66A. This one takes a little bit of work to get it, but it's really well worthwhile if you qualify, because it's a very valuable credit. So let's just start out by looking at the instructions for 1040 right here. And I've highlighted this paragraph here that tells you that if you take the credit and you're not allowed, and you weren't allowed to take the credit, in other words, you shouldn't have taken the credit, you could be not allowed to take it for 2 years. And if it was because of fraud, it could be as much as 10 years. So you want to be pretty careful when you take this credit that you actually qualify. And really the only way to do that is to go through these instructions line by line and look and read them to make sure you qualify. That's a little bit of work, like I said, but it's well worth the effort. And you also need to decide if you have qualifying children, because if you do, you will get a bigger credit. And so there's, several pages of instructions here that you need to go through, but if you get it, it's very much worth it. So we're going to assume that Sam and Wendy Jones have gone through these EIC instructions, and they've decided that they qualify, and also that they have 3 children that qualify. So the first thing they want to do to get their credit is to go to this schedule EIC, which is right here, and this is where you identify the children that qualify for the credit. And you can have as many as 3 children that qualify. So you see on line 1 here, we have these drop down boxes, and these are the kids that qualify. And so I'm going to go and select all 3 of those, and you'll see how their social came down from 1040. Then I need to enter the year that they were born for each of the kids, and do it just like this. The IRS wants these digits all in a separate box, which is a little bit inconvenient, but that's what they want, so that's what we'll give them. Now these kids were all born after 97, so we can skip down to line 5, and you'll see that the relationship has come down from 1040 as well. And on line 6, we're going to say that all these kids lived at home for 12 months, just like that. Oops, 12, not 13. And then I have this little computation at the bottom here where it tells you that you've completed the form for 3 children. So let's go back to page 2 of 1040. And next we need to click on the EIC calculation worksheet. That takes us to this worksheet, and you see here we have the $2,000 that came down from Schedule C. And scrolling down a little bit, we have the wages that came down from 1040 line 7. So our total earned income is $39,258. Now, at this point, we have a decision we need to make, and The decision is, do we want the IRS to figure the credit for us, or do we want to do it ourselves? So let me show you how both of these work. First, let's say that we want the IRS to do it. If we do, we'll check that box, and then I'll just show you what happens here. If I go back to page 2 and go back to 66A, you see I have this little notation here, EIC, and that tells the IRS that you want them to figure the credit for you. Now we'll go back to the worksheet and we'll do it the other way. We'll uncheck this box and we'll scroll down to page 2, and we have this total earned income, which came down from the previous worksheet right there, $39,258. And what we need to do is to go to the EIC table and find the amount for that, the credit that applies to the $39,258. So if we click here, I've highlighted the amounts that we want. This is the earned income credit table, which you find in the 1040 instructions. And you remember our amount that we want is $39,258, so it's in this range right here between $39,250 and $39,300. And we have a married filing joint return, and we have 3 qualifying kids, so our number is $29,997. So let's go back here and enter $29,997 like that. Then we'll scroll down here to line 10, and we essentially need to do the same thing all over again, except with a different amount. This time we need to use the amount on line 8, which is $39,458 this time. And we'll click there, and the range that we want is right here between 450 and 500, and so our number is 2955. And going back here to line 10, we'll enter 2955 right there, and there's our credit amount right there. Now let's scroll back up here and get back to 1040 page 2, and there's our 2955 that came through from the worksheet. So right now we have a refund of $54.49, but you might recognize the fact that we haven't entered any income tax withheld from the W-2s. Based on the amount of wages they have, they probably have about $1,800 of income tax withheld, so that pushes our refund up to $72.49. So that worked out pretty well for these taxpayers. Of course, everybody's not going to be that lucky, but these ones, it worked out really well. So thanks for listening. And if you want to use this form, you can find it at pdftax.com.